Once she arrived at Bolton Mills, suddenly there was a community for her and an opportunity to share stories or to hear somebody else's story. That's one element. So the social interaction and feeling part of a bigger community of people that were in her own age group, I think went a long way in terms of her emotional and mental well-being.
Hi, I'm Agnes Stowicki, Managing Editor with Comfort Life. We're speaking with insiders from Canada's leading retirement communities and care providers to uncover insights to community lifestyle, care, culture, and leadership. This includes insights from residents, family members, and administration. This is the Comfort Life Insider Perspective.
What impresses me the most about Bolton Mills, I guess, is more than just one element. One, it's the design and the footprint of the actual building and the facilities and how they are laid out that make it very easily accessible by the residents, because many of them require assistance or devices in terms of getting around in the building. And every area is thoughtfully designed so that there isn't a large distance between, say, coming off the elevators and getting to the dining room or to the games room or to the library, areas within the building itself. So that's number one. Number two, I'm incredibly impressed by the compassion, like the empathy, the commitment by people that work there. Second to none. Before we actually made a decision on behalf of our mother to put her, to place her in Bolton Mills, we went to visit a number of facilities, and we were struggling. When we actually walked into Bolton Mills, we instantly felt that element of family, people caring, people being very interested in my mother, her life story, some of her challenges, what kind of help she needed. And I think that is so prevalent in everything that they do, whether it be, the medical assistants or the kitchen staff, or whether it's, the individuals running the activities. Everyone is second to none in terms of the interest and the compassion that they show the residents. My mom, as we mentioned, she went into Bolton Mills in January of 2020. And about a month after that, ended up being in the hospital, unfortunately. When she was discharged from the hospital, Bolton Mills was on lockdown because the provincial government had mandated it as part of the pandemic and protocols to the pandemic. There were actually no outbreaks at all within the residence, but as a family member, I couldn't go visit. So essentially, my mother had spent maybe 2 or 3 weeks trying to become familiar with the surroundings and with people that were, coming to assist her and be part of her new life arrangements. And then suddenly said, oh my God, my family can't come and see me. I can tell you that everyone took such an interest in making sure that my mother was comfortable, that had companionship at different times during the day. Because coming out of the hospital at the time, she needed to go into quarantine for 2 weeks. The kitchen staff were writing little notes on her tray about, hoping you're having a great day. And if, want know, and we'll bring you different types of foods or selections of fruit or whatever it was. So to me, that meant a lot because it gave me more peace of mind being remote and not being able to really be there to witness how my mother was being treated. But I can tell by her demeanor and how comfortable she was that things were settling down for her. Really tough, not really knowing why all this was going on. And of course, there was great communication within the Bolton Mills community in terms of some of the government regulations, why they had to uphold certain restrictions. And not only did they communicate with the residents, but also with family, and kept us surprised as to what was going on as well. So, I think they were trying to balance so many different elements, like, the government imposition. I call them impositions, but I don't really mean it in a negative way at all, but it was all for everyone's safety. But then the residents and what they were going through, and also families and what they were going through. Exceptionally organized right from day one. When we actually received a phone call. So I give them a lot of credit for calling every single family and saying, we're going into lockdown and this is what it means. So they weren't just relying on, a printed letter or electronic means of communicating. They called and made sure that we understood what was happening. If we had any concerns, we could ask questions at the time. We could call back after the fact. So they were really organized from that perspective. And even from a day-to-day perspective, now that things are opening up, we are privy to a calendar that they publish. So we as family members know exactly what activities are being planned every single day, every single week, every single month, and those activities that our family member has participated in. So it gives us a glimpse into what's happening in Bolton Mills and the vast variety of activities, the volume of activities, whether they're indoor, outdoor, whether my mother participates in them, so that requires a lot of organization as well. Oh, my mom's suite is very, very nice. And I say that also in comparison to other facilities and residents that we went to visit. She has a 1-bedroom suite. It's about 550 square feet. So it gives her a separate living area with a couch and a chair, a TV, end tables, and a coffee table. She has a little kitchenette, which has, a sink with running water and a full fridge. And she has a very large bathroom as well, which is accommodated by a walk-in shower and, of course, a sink with a cabinet and a toilet. So it gives her lots of room to move around because she uses a walker, but it also gives family a nice place to go and visit, because this is like her new home. And when we visit, she feels like she is entertaining in her own space. So it gives her some pride to be able to do that. Okay, so in terms of improvement, a couple of elements. One is the social interaction with people her own age. She lived in a home by herself after my dad passed away, and it was a home that was far too large for her as a single person living there, multi-levels. And required a lot of work, both inside and outside, in terms of upkeep and maintenance. So I think she felt, as often as family would go and visit her and friends would drop by as well or call, I think she felt quite lonely, because a day is very long for an individual that's just sitting, watching TV, maybe talking on the phone for a few minutes here and there. Once she arrived at Bolton Mills, suddenly there was a community for her, and an opportunity to share stories or to hear somebody else's story. That's one element. So the social interaction and feeling part of a bigger community of people that were in her own age group, I think went a long way in terms of her emotional and mental well-being. The other element is there's a physio program that Bolton Mills offers. And my mother, when she lived at home, wouldn't really be motivated to do any kind of physical activity. As much as we tried to encourage her as family, she really wasn't really wanting to do it. So we only pushed so far. Coming into Bolton Mills and having that service offered, she is diligent. every single day when there is a physio program offered, she goes, and that is excellent for her physical and mental well-being, because physically, the more she moves around, like a body at rest stays at rest, a body in motion, stays in motion. And I see that she, as much as she has some mobility limitations, she is far better off because she has participated in that physio program. The other element would be her meals. At home, we were, as family, going in and providing like one meal a day. And then when we weren't there, relied on her to either warm up food or, to have leftovers and things like that. She gets 3 very good meals a day. So once again, for her overall well-being, she walks down to the dining room. So that gives her activities. She interacts with people in the dining room. So there's that social environment, and she gets great nutrition. As I think her demeanor is far more positive than it would otherwise have been. We could see that she was not doing quite well at home alone. We were constantly worried for her. There wasn't anyone that she welcomed in terms of staying with her full time to make sure that she was safe. So I think in terms of being part of the Bolton Mills community, she is much safer than she's ever been. She is happier than she would have been in her own home. And, she laughs, she smiles, she talks, she reminisces. And I think to me, that's very much my mother, because she's a very bubbly person, a happy person. And so we see a lot of that in this positive environment for her, versus having been in her own home, more so on her own, and not having the kinds of social and we'll say physical fitness activities that she is benefiting from at Bolton Mills. I think every individual that works at Bolton Mills understands fully what their responsibilities and what the expectations of their work and contribution is. Having said that, I think that they have done an exceptional job recruiting people that understand and uphold those values. The healthcare industry, and in particular, the long-term care industry, has suffered immensely during the past year, during COVID. Through it all, and I attribute it to the employees of Bolton Mills. They have bonded together and they have made it work. They have followed the rules. They have ensured that people also, like the residents, followed the rules to ensure that everyone was kept safe. So from that perspective, I think it's just been, it's not just wonderful to see that. I think they just said, we've got to ensure that our employees and our residents are safe. I'm going to do everything we need to. So sometimes I'm sure it was at their own personal sacrifices that they had to ensure that they upheld to those values. Immense. Absolutely immense. We were constantly worried, and I say we, I kind of represent the family because there's 4 siblings. So we were all worried constantly about Mom. Was she eating? Was she sleeping? She had fallen a number of times, and we could see the frequency of falls increasing, which gave us more concern. Her home was too large for her. It was getting to be old, so it needed maintenance. It needed to be refurbished in certain areas. The outside had lots of gardens and fruit trees and everything else. So when Mom started to have health concerns and could not look after her home inside and outside like she used to, then we had to step up. And it was a lot of work. a ton of work. So apart from just the overall upkeep of her home, we also worried about her because her health was declining, physically, mentally. She was not happy. You could see it in her. She was getting frustrated just in acknowledgement of her own limitations now. And she did not want to leave her home. This is the interesting thing. She kept fighting it and fighting it and fighting it until she fell one day. She broke her leg. And as part of the discussions post that event, she was the one that said, I don't want to go home anymore. I want to go to a place where I know I'm going to be with other people and with company. And we had already done, as a family, we'd done some research. And that at that point was the very first time we had been introduced to Bolton Mills. So once we moved Mom into Bolton Mills, I can tell you my personal relief, I'm not worried about her anywhere as close as I used to. I do in the general context of day to day, but I know she is getting superior caregiving and, care and love. And if anything is noted by the residents and or even the employees at Bolton Mills, I get phone calls. We have conversations. If the doctor who goes in to visit notices something, then the PSW or the nurse will call me to have a conversation with me. So it's very open, lots of communication, and I know my mom is happy. So that's probably the number one thing that gives me comfort in knowing that she's happy and she's safe and she's being well cared for. Yeah, it's not an easy decision, and it really does require the family to come together and have those difficult conversations. I would suggest that families do research. Take the time to take tours at different establishments, at different retirement facilities and residences. And then they would be in a position to compare. And I can tell you that if you compare Bolton Mills to a number of other residences, that you will be very, very impressed right from the minute you walk in, because of the ambiance that you feel, because that's the very first impression that anybody gets walking into any building. It's the ambiance, it's the friendliness of people, it's how they make you feel welcome and accommodating, how they consult with the potential resident in terms of their likes, their dislikes. There's a whole conversation, and they manage that very, very well. And Bolton Mills also takes the time to customize the level of caregiving that a resident may require, because some individuals are much more independent than my mother is, and others are more dependent than my mother is. And so they're able to fulfill the whole gamut of caregiving that any individual requires. So it is a long process, and it's a bit painful from the sense of the emotional part of making a decision. I think that now that I know that Comfort Life exists, I would suggest that first and foremost, start with Comfort Life. And as part of your research, determine what elements of a residence are important to you and important to your loved one. And ensure that you tour a number. Maybe 3 isn't the right number. Maybe it's 4. Maybe it's 5. But certainly after a certain number of tours of different places, you will quickly get to see the difference in those establishments. And you will realize that it's the ambiance, that it's the employees, that it's the residents, that it's the food, it's the activities. All of these things are important elements of making that final decision. Yeah, not to be afraid to make that decision. It is actually better to make the decision earlier than later, because this is based on our own experience, the sooner that you actually allow your loved one to have that experience in that community setting, the better it is. They adapt. They then become part of the community. They can share stories. They laugh. They spend time together. They develop new friendships that they otherwise wouldn't have. And they still have their whole network of family and friends that will come to visit, that will be part of their new home. It really was, our very first impression was extremely good. Walking in, there were residents that were sitting in the common area. There's a piano available. And not the first time, but the second time we went back to tour the facilities, somebody was playing the piano, one of the residents. And, the tour guy said, oh, our residents sit and they play the piano all the time. And, so I thought, well, that's wonderful. They have a TV on. And that was the common area. And then around it is built some of the other rooms, like the library, and there's a TV room, or they call it theater room. And then there was another area where they sometimes do some community cooking or baking. So everything is in one convenient area, just like little offshoots from the main common area. So that was important for us, because we said, geez, mom can't be walking long distances to get to any of these areas. That was number one. Secondly, the types of rooms that were available was quite extensive. And so we had the option, lots of options in terms of the different layouts, the different sizes as well, the floors that we felt might be more important to mom in terms of where she was, how close it was to the elevator, or how far away it was from the elevator. And then, of course, everybody we met, they all greeted us. Hi, how are you today? And how are you? And then watching how they interacted with the residents, that was impressive, because you could tell that it was very, very genuine. They knew them by name. They knew that maybe, they had pasta dish for lunch, and how was your pasta? Was it good? Did you like the sauce? Or, it was just the kind of interaction that they were having that I thought, this is the place. This is it. This is, and those elements really sealed the decision for us in terms of moving mom in. Yeah. It's rather lengthy, and it's a bit on the painful side. As family, it's hard to think about placing your mom in a home, right? And how she's going to adapt when she has been living in her own home and enjoyed the freedom of moving around in her property, and entertaining when she wanted and cooking on her own. But I think that as much as that is part of history, and you will always honor it, and you'll always keep those types of memories in your mind and in your heart, there comes a time when it's not safe to leave parents in their home. So as part of the journey, you have to come to that realization, whether you're a son or brother, sister, anybody who's involved in making that decision, then really has to say, what's going to keep mom the safest, and what place is going to make her the happiest. And certainly Bolton Mills, hit it on every single element that we were looking for in terms of making that decision. The process in terms of establishing her at Bolton Mills was very easy. They make it very easy. We arranged actually for movers to come in and bring in pieces of furniture that were part of my mom's home, so that she had an element of familiarity in her suite. I think that is part of the transition process to make them feel comfortable, because then they can recognize that this was their couch, and this was their chair, and this was their bedroom suite. But Bolton Mills made it very easy for us. The suite was cleaned before we arrived. They had a welcome package waiting for my mom. They checked in on her. They actually provided escort services to and from the dining room and to other areas in the building, just to make sure that she was getting familiar with where things were. So it was an easy transition, very friendly, and I think it was friendly, but it the fear out of moving for the residents. So the first impression was the ambiance, walking in and feeling that it was a cozy, warm, inviting place. It was not a typical institutional building, because we, during our journey, had walked into some thinking, ooh, it's a little dark, it's a little big, this, right? That impression is really important. So walking in, it felt warm and welcoming. Residents were sitting around chatting in the main sitting area. There was a gentleman playing a piano there. And this is a resident that was on another visit, when we were still doing our second tour. There was entertainment that was taking place outside on the patio. So it was nice to hear the residents singing along or clapping with the musician. We toured the different rooms that were available, the suites. And we're fortunate that at that time we had options in terms of the size of the suite, the floor that we might have wanted mom to be on, and just the overall personality of the employees, because they chatted and interacted with the residents, called them by name, asked them specific questions, maybe about, what they had eaten, or whether they enjoyed the ice cream or the espresso, or whatever activity they might have had that day or the day before. So it really came together for us as a community, working together and people living together that wanted to be there. Whether you're an employee, you wanted to work there. Whether you're a resident, you wanted to live there. And it's hard to put your finger on any one thing that pointed to that, but collectively, in assessing all of these things that we observed and that we experienced, that helped us make our final decision to select Bolton Mills. I would have pressured my parents to have made that move sooner. And I say that because my dad would have enjoyed living at Bolton Mills tremendously. So as a couple, if they could have enjoyed that time, I think that they would have both benefited immensely from that. As a trusted advisor to my mom, I think I would have pushed sooner to have her move into a place like Bolton Mills, because I think it could have saved her from some of the fall that really triggered this whole opportunity. Was unfortunate, because she now has some physical limitations because of her fall. But if we'd done it sooner, she would have been safer. We would have had peace of mind. She would have established a new friendship community of friends sooner. I think all around it would have been much better if we had just started the process sooner and convinced her to move into Bolton Mills sooner.
For more information about this community, you can visit their profile at comfortlife.ca.